And one of the other concepts I really teach into people is get the property to pay for itself. People, what do you mean by that?
Yeah. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for Bruce for prompting me there. So what I really mean by that is start collecting the rent and utilize that rent as a deposit on the purchase price.
Yeah, and you did that all via your solicitor as well.
Yes.
So the solicitor got the money, and the solicitor could then confirm the money was the deposit, and that's what the bank's looking for.
Welcome to the Property Business Accelerator podcast, and today I'm welcoming back Bruce Mannering from Bond Finance. And today we're going to talk not just about finance, but about creative deals, and more in particular, exchange delayed completion. And Bruce and I have been working together for a long time, and I have done exchange delayed completion with the aid of Bruce, and also a lot of my mentees have done exchange delayed completion with the aid of Bruce. Now, not many brokers are able to do this, and that's why it's been great to have Bruce come along today to explain some of the concepts around exchange delayed completion, which is all about deal structure, it's all about finding the right deal, but more importantly, it's the person behind the deal that generally allows this to make happen, and it's that relationship you can build between the seller and the buyer, and you actually remove a lot of the barriers because someone is keen to sell, someone is keen to buy, and it's all about the mechanism that you do that under without requiring a massive deposit. And that is one of the key things why a lot of people are really excited about this concept. So Bruce, can you tell me a little bit more about how people go about this exchange delayed completion concept?
Sure. Every deal I've done, it seems to be a retiring landlord wanting to get rid of a property and having problems selling it, and it hangs around on the market. And every landlord, retiring landlord, just wants to get the deal done, and it's just got this mental thing in the head, let's get exchanged, and then I definitely will be completing. So the key is to get a line in the sand of what the property is currently, and all the deals where there's a minimum deposit going in or no deposit going in, they're doing some refurbs or they're splitting them up. They're changing something to get the higher end GDV. And then when you come to purchase the property, we're looking to complete on the uplifted value, not the purchase price. Now, every single bank in this country only completes on the purchase price or value, whatever the lower is. So how do we go about that? Now, I'm lucky enough, we lend out our own money as well as brokers, and I've got a bridging company called BDK. And we are registered with a lot of the panelled valuers out there, one particular being VAS. And VAS are also on the panel of HTB in Shawbrook. So what we get agreed with HDB and Shawbrook is that BDK instructs the valuation. We get a line in the sand where it is. The valuer also gives us an NGDV. We then take that valuation, send it to Shawbrook, and ask them, right, this is the plan of action. Are you going to give us permission in 6 to 9 months' time to complete on the NGDV? So it's all agreed up front. And once we've got that sheet of paper, the client then exchanges. They get the works done, and hopefully there's a high enough uplift in value that it's a no money down deal, which we've done a few times, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. So there's some key principles there that I'd like to pull out, which is obviously you've got a variation between what you're actually buying it for and what the value that the bank is going to lend against. Obviously, they love to see some refurbs and uplifts or something different to allow that value. But one of the critical things is the amount of time from agreeing the purchase, getting the purchase in, and when you actually complete. And as you said, 6 to 9 months. In actual fact, a lot of the deals that kind of a lot of my mentees do a little bit longer than that, because the bigger the variation in time, obviously, the more distance you're putting yourself between that sort of agreed price and the new price. And I think something I drum home into everybody I talk to about this is that you've got to have some kind of why is there going to be a difference in value? You can't rely on just the market. You've got to have something. And I do hark back to one of my deals where you always said, Mike, what are you actually doing to this property? What are you doing to this property to actually make it work?
Give me some receipts.
I want some receipts. So we'll get into that deal more specifically soon. But I think that is a great concept. And in actual fact, I think when I first came with the deal that I had this idea of doing on, I said to you, can we just extend, for complete on value, because it's over the 6-month rule. Lots of property investors know the 6-month rule. It's going to be beyond 6 months. Can we complete on purchase? And you were like, oh, I'm not sure about this. Let's go and talk to
Shawbrook at
that point in time.
Yeah.
So what did you do? So I came to you knocking on your door saying, Bruce, this concept's here. Yeah. Can we do this? And you went, let me go and talk to Shawbrook. So I'll hand over to you to tell the story.
So we've got a very good relationship with lots of banks, one being Shawbrook. So we picked up the phone, spoke to the head underwriter at Shawbrook Bank. And then he went away and spoke to head of risk. And they all had a little huddle. We went through the deal itself, what the parameters are and stuff like that. And I've actually still got that email from back in 2017, I think, from the head underwriter saying, yes, we agreed. If you do this, if you do that, if you do this, we will complete on the OMV value,
the open market value.
The open market value, not the purchase price.
Yeah, you should put that in a frame, shouldn't you? Really?
Yeah, in your office?
Because that was the new underwriting policy, and I think that's where people need to understand that you've got to work with a decent broker who actually has that relationship, because a lot of these deals get more. The more complex you get, the more difficult it is to communicate the story. And I always tell everybody it's the story that you portray makes the life easier. And I think one of the things that Bond's really good at is actually telling that story to the broker so they fully understand it, they're clear and in the picture, and therefore it's far easier to buy into those kind of concepts. And you know what I'm like. I love pushing the edges of the boundaries and making you go off and try and do things. And I think that's one of the key things. And I think, we'll get into this a bit later on in the podcast as well, is like, I also get really frustrated with people who are like, oh, but these rates are more expensive in this. And it's like, no. It's about getting the deal done. Don't worry about the rates. Actually, when you're doing a £1 million, multi-million pound deal, you're not putting much money in, whether it's 1% higher, 1% lower, or 2% higher, 2% lower, really makes no difference.
Yep.
You're going to make hundreds of thousands of pounds out of this. You're going to make tens of thousands of pounds of cash flow every month. It's like, what are you thinking about?
Yeah, exactly. Spot on. It's getting the deal done and actually securing the property and getting that into your portfolio and growing your portfolio. You can always remortgage at a later time, maybe to more of a retail type lender.
That's right.
2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line, but get the deal done, get the cash flow. That's the key. And worry about the rates later.
Yeah. This deal I'm going to talk about, it's actually one of my own deals, and one of the deals that you always say is one of your favourite ones. And this is what we were referring to earlier, where we actually went to Shawbrook and
because this started
this
the whole
kind
process.
of started that real big thing into exchange delayed completion. Look, exchange delayed completion has been around for quite a while. We didn't invent the process, but what we did, I think, really push the envelope on is actually being able to complete on open market value without, say, bridges and all of this kind of stuff that's very expensive that you have. And a number of people who came to me with a deal and said, oh, if only there wasn't the bridging. Well, this mechanism is one of those. And I was one of those. That was why I actually got to this place, because I was like, bridging's expensive, everything's expensive, finance is expensive, but there's so many deals I could do if we could open this up, and that's what's happened. So this came to me, and the other thing about this deal, as I said, they're all unique and different, and one of the other concepts I really teach into people is get the property to pay for itself. People, what do you mean by that?
Yeah. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for Bruce for prompting me there. So what I really mean by that is start collecting the rent and utilise that rent as a deposit on the purchase price.
Yeah, and you did that all via your solicitor as well.
Yes.
So the solicitor got the money, and the solicitor could then confirm the money was the deposit, and that's what the bank's looking for.
Yes. So they need to know how it was all done, what it was all done. So you can't just like whip it off and say, right, I'm forwarding the rent and here it is. By the way, I've made, but when the bank goes to the solicitor, where's the source of the deposit? He goes, well, I've already paid this amount of money, through the exchange period to the seller. So the purchase price from what was agreed. Now, what's the outstanding balance to be completed on? Oh, by the way, so funny this, isn't it? It's a funny coincidence this, that the amount of money that the bank was going to advance was what's left. So that's the property paying for itself. The rent roll that's coming off, you're handing over to the landlord, but because you're now in control, you're legitimately handing it over. That is then being chipped off the purchase price that you've been agreed, and that then eventually lowers the price that you actually buy for.
But as you said earlier, when you overlap two strategies, you get fantastic results.
Absolutely.
And what other strategy did you do?
Yeah, so I went back to, with the exchange and delayed completion, obviously that facility allows you to start collecting the rents and pay that down. But also in the meantime, I did a lot of works.
Yes, you
did. And therefore it went up in value along with obviously rental increases. And this was a yield-based valuation because this was a 22-bed HMO on the south coast.
That's it. So
this 22-bed HMO effectively... I didn't really need to put some money down. So what I did do is, so what had happened is this property had fallen over a few times. I've been monitoring it, fallen over.
And you got hold of the valuation.
And also, after I did a bit of digging around, asking around, as you should be doing as a good due diligence, I've realised that actually someone I knew was one of the people who pulled out on it.
Yeah.
So I had a chat with him and actually got hold of the valuation. So I understood exactly how the valuer was valuing it, understood exactly how I could then structure a deal.
It was a 10% yield, wasn't it?
I understood that it was a 10% yield. Yeah. And the guy had a figure in his head that he wanted he wanted his £1 million, and the rent roll wasn't at 100,000 to be valued at.
It's 91.
It was something like that. Yeah. So he befriended all the tenants. He was collecting the rent by going around every Friday afternoon and picking up cash on a weekly payment off all the tenants. And if they weren't there because they were at work, they'd leave it on the table. He'd sign their rent book and pick up the cash and go around. So it was a weekly rent collection. Obviously, it meant he could go to the pub afterwards, I'm sure, but and spend his money. But it was like, I'm like, what are you doing? So, again, landlords have their thing. It's amazing how they don't change. And because, therefore, he knew all the tenants really well, he wasn't putting up the rent. And he was making loads. It was unencumbered property. All these things work better when there's an unencumbered property. Retiring landlords often do have I know much to all these modern day property investors, that's like beyond, because they love to leverage up. But quite often they've paid off all their debt. Exactly. And that's also opens up other avenue streams that they can do. So
because you got the rent up from 91 to, was it 115?
That's right. Yeah,
it was 115.
Yeah.
So you, on a 10% gross yield valuation, you're moving the value on a commercial value from 910 to 1.15. And then we raised 75% on that 1.15. I can't do
something like it was in the 800s, so I think it could have been 865,000.
Yeah.
I'd then paid him around about 100,000.
Yeah,
I think so. If you think about it, that was essentially it. I mean, it's a 10% yield. Therefore, that's out of a 25% deposit. That's 10% of it, isn't it? 10% yield. That's how I always see it in my head. Then we'd increase the value as well. Obviously, there was some stamp duty to pay. I'd exchanged. I wasn't like one of my mentees who always does it on a pound. The guy wanted a bit more, I think. What often happens is they then talk to some people when you start putting proposals, and what they do is they start chipping away. I wanted as long as possible. I wanted as little as possible. But was the deal still worth doing with the mechanism I used? Yes, we kind of hit my bottom bit.
Yeah.
And he just had in his mind he wanted $1 million, and it was like he
me a
didn't
million.
care.
Yeah.
He also wanted to go off to Spain. He was going off to Spain. Didn't want to have to worry about picking up his rent on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
So he was like, and I said, I'll take control. I said, look, we'll exchange quickly. We'll take control. You don't have to worry about it anymore. You've sold it. I'm obliged to complete, and you get your price you want, but you need to give me time to get the rest of your money. And he was like, yeah, fine. I said, but you will be getting money in the interim. And he was like, yeah, that's good. Yeah, I like that. Mm. And we did the mechanism, and then we completed, got Shawbrook back in.
Yep.
To do that final valuation.
That's it.
And we completed, and we were all very happy around that one.
Yeah, I know. So that was the start. That was the
That
start.
that was the embryo of doing it in this way, I think. You know, I've done quite a lot of creative deals. There's been different techniques work in different timelines, different time zones. I mean, back in when I first started, finance was a bit looser then.
So that's why we had the GFC.
So that's why it worked, you know, but now. And this is what I really want to know, because when I first started, a lot of people used to talk to me if we talked about some of this stuff. Oh, it was about not keeping everybody in the picture, because it was like, is this quite right? Is this not quite right? Is this so? Although none of it was completely wrong, it was like, well, the valuer can't know this, and the value. Whereas in a way, this is the opposite. This is about being as open as possible throughout the process, so that everybody can see what you're doing and buying into the process up front, so you know, and you have that assurance that everybody's on board. And I think that, to me, is one of the biggest differences to when I first started out. It was almost like it wasn't smokes and mirrors, but it was sometimes it felt like that, because you were like, you know, remortgaging so quickly that the people shouldn't know what you actually were buying it for, and agreed price. Whereas this is open book. And this isn't about disguising what you're doing. But also, as I said earlier in the podcast, it's about having that story that a good broker like Bruce can convey to the banks and the underwriters, so that they know what they're doing.